Okay, woo! Hello, everyone. Okay, it's Resistance Live for the 20th of November, 2019. It's yet again another day where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we're still here. And perhaps, I think it's probably fair to say, the most significant day in the impeachment story of Donald Trump that we have yet had. So I want to give everybody a couple of minutes to log in here and to kind of get up to speed on everything that's going on. But we have like mountains of stuff to talk about based on today's testimony. And I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to anybody who's been tuned in any way, shape, or form to today's developments. I'm really shocked. I sort of feel like the only people who are working today are the people on the Hill. And of course, Pompeo, who claims he's been working all day. But we have a lot to talk about and a lot of questions to answer on where we are. So Gordon Sondland is, of course, testifying today on the Hill, as you all know, unless you're under a rock. And the very curious thing that happened this morning, like literally 15 minutes before he was scheduled to testify, was that his opening statement was released to the press. And the opening statement itself said, in no uncertain terms, that there was a quid pro quo, that everyone involved in Ukraine policy knew it, and that there was no shadow policy because the direct center lane policy, as he has now testified multiple times, was to get Ukraine to announce that they were starting an investigation into the Bidens. They didn't actually have to carry it out. So now we know as well that the whole point was election interference. Like, there's literally no doubt about that after today's testimony. And Sondland is basically like thrown everybody under the bus. I mean, there's kind of like no other way to describe it. I made a list here of everybody who's implicated so far who are top level names by what Sondland has testified to today. So it's Trump, Pence, Giuliani, Pompeo, Rick Perry, Mick Mulvaney, Volker, and Bolton so far. And that's not even including the lower level staffers who are on some of the emails about which inquiry has already been conducted. So it's no joke. It's no joke when we say that he's basically implicated everybody who touched Ukraine's policy in these impeachable offenses. The other thing that I will just say here is that the continued reinforcement of like everybody knew, everybody was in it together, has very significant bearings for purposes of a trial. So one of the things that it means, for those of you who will remember, we've talked a lot about conspiracy here, is that a conspiracy is when you all agree to commit a criminal act together and you as an individual take an affirmative act in furtherance of that conspiracy. From that moment forward, you can be held accountable for the behavior of anyone else with whom you've conspired. So, Trump can say to Giuliani, you go get me my investigations. And then he says to his other people, talk to Giuliani. And then Giuliani goes out and does everything that it would take to get those investigations. Every single thing that Giuliani does and anybody else who's in the conspiracy is something that Trump can be held liable for. Okay. The other thing that's really relevant about this is that there is a hearsay exception for people in criminal conspiracies, meaning that if you are in a criminal conspiracy and you make a statement against your own self-interest, like you say, oh, I just murdered that guy, to the person who you conspired with, that statement can be used against the other person, not just you. So the stuff about like everybody knew, we were all in it together, everybody was on the same page, we were all in the same lane, all very relevant, not just for an impeachment trial, but also for any criminal prosecutions that may be coming later. So again, extremely relevant, profoundly damning testimony. It's kind of like really hard to overstate the significance of today. Now, there are some things that the Republicans are trying to do in exchange. And I'm going to point out to you along the way, like how stupid all of this is. They have managed to score some points with the idea that like Sondland didn't know that Burisma equaled Biden. That really doesn't hold a lot of weight. Let me just say that. The only reason why Sondland would have for doing that, by the way, is because it could potentially prevent him from being prosecuted criminally for election interference. Okay, so if he doesn't know that investigating Burisma means Biden at the time that it's happening, he's not affirmatively engaging in a felony of interfering in the 2020 election. So he may be trying to cover his ass there a little bit, but it's sort of hard to imagine how he didn't know when the Bidens were affirmatively mentioned multiple times throughout this entire scheme, including to Sondland himself. So, I'm not sure how much weight that's going to carry. And, I don't really think it carries much weight from the standpoint of the Republicans. The Republicans are also trying to make hay out of the fact that Trump never went to Sondland and said, I demand a quid pro quo. And in fact, 2 days after they found out about the whistleblower, Trump says, I don't want a quid pro quo. I want nothing. I want nothing. I want nothing. I want nothing. We're going to get to that in a minute. The Republicans want to ride that horse all the way in. I'm just going to remind you all, right? Just because you say I didn't murder that person when you're standing over them with a gun and you shoot them in the head doesn't mean you didn't actually murder them, right? There's like no requirement here in this or any crime that the person who's committing the crime says what the crime is while they're committing it in order to be found guilty. This is one of the more amusing aspects of what has happened today, right? Like you can actually be convicted of a crime even if you don't actually say that you're committing a crime. I mean, obvious, right? But if that's the hill the Republicans want to die on, good luck to them. The other thing that I will say here just about this is that there is a play being made right now that, Sondland, assumed or deduced that there was an exchange here on the quid pro quo front. Let me just say one other thing. There's explicit text messages that he's involved in that lay out the quid pro quo. So the idea that it's just an assumption on Sondland's part is not actually true. Like there's actually text message evidence that says this is what needs to get done to get the White House meeting. This is what needs to get done for the aid to be released. So the thing to remember here, by the way, is that these hearings are not a trial, okay? They are hearings to determine whether or not the president should be impeached. There is plenty of evidence. There was plenty of evidence yesterday. There is a mountain of evidence today that proves that the president has committed impeachable offenses. The trial portion of this, if we get there, will be on the floor of the Senate. And at that point, the weight of the evidence will be considered by the jurors, namely the Senate. Okay, so we'll have to wait and see again, like what happens there. But at the moment, the Republicans are really not scoring much hay. Jim Jordan is shouting a lot. Devin Nunes is like verbal diarrhea nonstop, but they're really not scoring any points. And, I have to say that the very minimal points that they've been able to make have been through very leading questions that fundamentally go to facts as to whether or not something is legally a crime. That is not something that a witness is allowed to opine on in a criminal trial or anywhere else. I don't know. It looks to me like the Republicans have nothing right now, like literally nothing in terms of a defense. All right. One of you asked if people can be impeached simultaneously. The answer to that is yes, they can. They could impeach all of them today if they wanted to. There's nothing that would stop that. Yes, there could be multiple impeachment of federal officials at the same time. The other thing that I just want to point out here today from the standpoint of where we find ourselves as we head toward a Senate impeachment, because I just want to mention this right now, impeachment trial rather. I've been saying this for several weeks. There's literally no doubt after today that the president is going to be impeached in the House. There's no other outcome that's possible at this point, unless he resigns before it happens. So we're really in a position now where the issue of what's going to happen in the Senate, again, is front and center here. By the way, I will just mention that Senator Ron Johnson was implicated today in Sondland's testimony as well. Some of you have asked, should he recuse? Should he resign? Yes, yes, and yes. Whether or not that actually happens is anybody's guess at this point. But of course, yes, he should. If we were operating under the usual rules, he'd already be gone. Pompeo, by the way, has signaled apparently today that he may resign. There was reporting in Yahoo News this morning that 3 Republican senators who he'd spoken to had confirmed that he plans to resign. So we haven't had confirmation of that yet. But again, there may be more movement on this before we get to the point of a Senate trial that would be very significant. As we move toward what's coming next, a couple of other really significant bits of like cracks in the wall. Ken Starr this morning said on Fox News, you're not going to believe this when I say it, but it's true, that there was enough proof now to convict the president of bribery, and that it was very clear at this point that the president had committed impeachable offenses and should be impeached. Ken Starr, who's like a paid commentator for Fox News. Also, Chris Wallace made similar statements today on Fox. Now, Chris has already said a couple of things in the past few weeks that have indicated that, he gets what's going on here. But we've had multiple times today on Fox News where like Fox News reporters and commentators are saying that this is really, really, really bad for the president, that the evidence is there now to convict him of impeachable offenses. And so, layers, again, continue to be peeled back. We continue to see cracks in the wall. I will just mention that, while we do not have any major announcements yet from GOP senators nationally, there are some announcements in the last 24 hours from significant state senators in the GOP. That they are not going to follow the party line on this. Of course, they don't have a vote, but they're out there making very vocal statements about the need to save the party from Trumpism. And that pressure may rise. After today, I really think that it's going to be incredibly difficult for there to be any viable defense of this president based on what we've seen. Doesn't mean they're not going to scream and shout a lot and try. But if it's just Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes, they've basically got nothing. Like there's nothing that those two fellows are doing today, let alone Castor, who sort of almost had a meltdown in the middle of his second cross that is really serving them well at the moment. Okay, a couple questions we had about Volker and Morrison's testimony yesterday afternoon. Yes, some of that testimony was really weird. I just want to make this clear. There among some of these witnesses, there is still very much a cover your ass scenario going on. We didn't think there was anything wrong, but we ran to the lawyers. There was nothing about this that felt unusual, but we reported it up the chain of command. That's very strange, right? And it just doesn't line up and make sense. I'll also just add that Volker, who was anticipated to be a very positive witness for the GOP, confirmed that the theory about the Bidens was a conspiracy theory, that everything having to do with Burisma had been disproven. The GOP didn't score many points there, frankly. Morrison was a little shadier. But again, the fact that he had questions about Vindman's judgment seems to me to have more to do with the fact that he wasn't happy that Vindman went to counsel instead of going to him. That doesn't undermine what Fiona Hill had to say about Vindman in his performance review that Vindman read out loud yesterday during his testimony. So again, I don't, from a trial perspective, and I said this to Preet Bharara last night on Twitter when he asked, what do the lawyers think would happen if this was a criminal trial right now? If this was a criminal trial, the defendant would have already pled. We would have seen, whoever the version of President Trump would be, pleading guilty for a lesser included sentence, or to a lesser included offense. The evidence here is overwhelming, and there have been no significant legal or political points scored at this point by the GOP. It's a very good day. I will tell you that the weird thing about the president on the lawn today was that he came out with a notepad with notes that were written in massive, oversized black magic marker, Sharpie as usual, that said, I want nothing, no quid pro quo. These are the final words you'll hear from the president of the United States. Weird. I mean, off the rails weird, right? And since then, he's been on Twitter, on Air Force One, writing, I want nothing, I want nothing, I want nothing. Things are in very high profile meltdown at the moment. So that brings me to kind of the next consideration. There are indications right now that there are significant GOP and conservative figures who are pushing the GOP to start demanding the resignation of the president. This may not happen publicly. It may not happen vocally, but there are indications right now that the GOP has finally realized that there is no winning strategy here. Now, whether or not I'm not suggesting that we're going to hear that from McConnell, okay? But what I do want to say is that I think there is a growing possibility now that someone's going to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and have a conversation with Trump about how he should leave. Because at this stage of the game, if they keep continuing down this path, let alone with Fiona Hill tomorrow, because I want to remind you also of something about Fiona Hill in a minute. It's not going to get any better. If Sondland was a bombshell today, but if you haven't read Fiona Hill's testimony, the GOP has it coming tomorrow, you would kind of not believe. My expectation is that those conversations are going to be growing as we move through and into tomorrow. All right. So we have a couple more witnesses testifying this afternoon. Again, these witnesses, by the way, are going to take apart the GOP argument that there was a need to undermine corruption in Ukraine. I'm going to remind you all of one thing. In the early June, there was a determination by the Department of Defense that the new Ukrainian government had met the standards for anti-corruption to have the aid released. They didn't get it till September. Okay, like the Department of Defense had reached a determination that anti-corruption standards in Ukraine had been met such that the aid should be released. So the whole argument of like the president was trying to fight corruption in Ukraine, we all knew it held no water. It's really not going to hold any water after this afternoon. Tomorrow we have Fiona Hill, and then after Fiona Hill we have Dave Holmes. Fiona Hill, again, for those of you who didn't read her transcript, I mean, I don't really know how to put it. She kind of is a take no bullshit warrior, meaning that in her behind closed doors deposition, when the GOP members came at her with their conspiracy theories, she cut them off at the knees. Like, it wasn't like Gordon Sondland sitting there today smiling a little bit. Oh my gosh, it's crazy, Devin Nunes. Isn't this so much fun? No. Fiona Hill was basically like, that's fucking bullshit you're spewing at me, without, using the colorful language that I use. But it was pretty close. It was like, this is a flat out conspiracy theory. I'm not going to waste my time thinking about this. Is this what you've got? You think this somehow justifies what the president did here? That is who Fiona Hill is. So there's going to be fireworks tomorrow. You can basically like rest your happy little hats on it. And then Dave Holmes tomorrow afternoon is going to testify about this conversation that Sondland currently says he doesn't remember, but hasn't discounted as being possible, where Sondland said to the president, Zelensky loves your ass. He'll do whatever you want. ASAP Rocky, now in the impeachment record for all time. Holmes is going to testify about that and about the fact that the phone was held away from Sondland's ear and he overheard this and he overheard the president asking about investigations. I told you all by the end of this week, I thought this boat was going to be sunk. And, I am not so far with any reason to retract that particular statement. There is like literally articles of impeachment could be filed right now. And that's been true for several weeks now. But today they could file them lockstep and have no concerns about convicting the president, assuming that, we had a legitimate jury pool in the form of the senators. But in any event, at this moment, it is as cut and dried a case as any criminal prosecutor would care to have for bribery, extortion, abuse of power, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. And at this point in time, I will just tell you that I think it's only going to get worse for the president from here. So the denouement of this is yet to come, but it is a day to celebrate, to be happy. I've been a little giddy. I've had a lot of laughter. I've cut a lot of jokes on Twitter. There's like reasons to be happy about the emergence of karma and the emergence of evidence. And, Gordon Sondland, yes, I will admit, is smug. There's a couple people who have said, doesn't it make you nervous that he's so smug? No, I used to deal with men like this all the time when I was a lawyer. He may be, I said this morning on Twitter, he may be a prick, but now he's our prick. And, that's not a bad thing. I think the reason why he's so much at ease today is because he's telling the truth. At least 99% of the time. There's a couple times where I'm like, come on, Gordon. Usually around the sort of like, I just deduced that it was a quid pro quo, or I didn't know Burisma meant Biden. But in any event, the point is that I think he's relaxed because he's incredibly well prepared and because he's unburdened of lies. I think that this all just bodes incredibly poorly for the GOP. And I think at this point they know it. Literally, like, the opening statement got dumped so close to the beginning of the hearing this morning that Devin Nunes went in with his initial opening hearing saying, I'm so sorry you're going to get smeared today, Ambassador Sondland. And then, the next time that he was up was basically like, you're lying, so he ended up being the person doing the smearing. It's all been a very wild ride today and it's not over yet. So that's the kind of summary for where we are today at 3:18 p.m. Eastern time. Lots more breaking news to come, lots more developments expected. And I'll just let you all know that tomorrow, the broadcast will be in the morning Pacific time. I'm not going to wait until this late because I unfortunately have like a thing I can't cancel tomorrow afternoon, my time. But I will be live tweeting as much as I can. And the broadcast will be sometime tomorrow morning. I'm probably going to wait until after Fiona Hill's opening statements are done. Just because I'm expecting that it's going to be like another absolutely scathing day. So please stay attuned to the Patreon feed. I'll let you know when. Just want to thank you all for this ride so far, for being here, for your support. And we'll remind you all, please keep making your phone calls to all of those moderate senators. It's really important that you do it now because, again, there's literally no question at this point that the president is going to be impeached in the House of Representatives. There's no way to stop this train at this point unless he resigns. And even then, we're likely to have impeachment of other officials should they choose not to resign as well. We gotta keep the pressure up, like 100%. And by the way, it doesn't hurt to call Adam Schiff and thank him because he's doing a hell of a job. And so, by the way, is Dan Goldman. I mean, man, he got some admissions out of Sondland today that were like priceless. All right. That's it. Much love to all of you. I will talk to all of you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye.